district, you know the Pope listens. Dynasty, our religion, for the blokes missing. On all of these trades, on all of these plays, on all of these grades. By the end of the day, y'all getting played. So, what you gonna do next? Try to fill up that flex? Send the homie a text? That trash offer's the best? You try to make it complex, then they text you back, now all of a sudden they don't make any sense? Broaden your horizons, boy. Dynasty's not for the Simons, boy. These trades not for consignment, boy. Respect your opponent, y'all some piranhas, boy. This my advice, from me to you. Open up your cute little podcast queue. Search up GOAT District, my dude. Pop it in your ear, man, y'all know what to do. It's the... And I always be traded. And I always be traded. And I always be trading. Y'all try to betray them, but first you gotta bait them. Fish.
What is up, Fantasyland? Welcome back to the district. If you're new to the channel, help us get to 500 subscribers. Smash the subscribe right now. Sometimes you got to move the net, Theo, to catch the big fish. We're on a different time today, a bit earlier. We appreciate you guys tuning in live. I see a bunch of you kind of strolling in. We got a big show tonight. There's a lot to talk about. We thought we'd have Dan back, but the flow is keeping him down. Theo, I'm going to pass it to you. I might be in and out at first, but I'm pumped for tonight. We got a big guest. You see him on the screen. Tell the people who he is.
Yeah, so we're really excited to welcome Matt Schauf either back to the GOAT District or into the GOAT District. I think it's we've had pretty much all of the DraftSharks in the GOAT District. So it's kind of like, I guess, the Mandela effect of fantasy podcasts when you start, figuring out which guys have been in and out. But we had Adam Krautwurst on about 2 weeks ago. It was an unbelievably good show. Highly recommend anybody listen to it. We had a deep dive into the tight end position. Stoked to have Matt on tonight. Matt, you guys are putting out some fire over DraftSharks. Really fantastic podcasts. You guys have had a lot of beat reporters on recently. And you guys, of course, are putting out some great articles. And I think one article you guys are really known for, especially after the success you had last year, is your Comeback Player of the Year. Maybe you could talk about last year's Comeback Player of the Year and a quick preview, without saying who it is, of the one behind a paywall up on DraftSharks.
Yeah, first of all, thank you guys for having me on, and thank you for shifting the time after I was at the theme park with my family yesterday and realized that I had committed to be on the show at the same time as our first DS Invitational draft. So I appreciate you guys being flexible to help me get on here. I will absolutely talk about last year's Comeback Player anytime, and I don't know why I'm not just wearing his jersey all the time, because it was super tough.
Because Jared Small is wearing it probably right now, so you got to borrow it.
So we had the big three articles every year. It's Comeback Player, Breakout Player, and Early Round Bust. And, it's to single out the guys that we really think could be difference makers. And Cooper Kupp, Jared and I just each kind of arrived at having much higher in our rankings than he was going. And so when we were figuring out who the Comeback Player was going to be, he pretty quickly rose to be that pick. Because even though, we weren't necessarily like definitely Cooper Kupp over Robert Woods, obviously from the comeback side, though, Kupp was coming off the injury, but both of those guys were going at value spots, and Kupp had the comeback issue, had the touchdowns in his past. So we knew that the ultimate ceiling was there. So he became the feature player for that Comeback Player. This year is a guy that I might even be more excited right now about than I was about Cooper Kupp at this time last year. So it was another easy pick, maybe even easier than Kupp. It was agreement from all of us. That article's already up there. And I really think that he's somebody who could make a big difference, in tournaments, in single leagues. I think he's somebody who's really in for a big bounce back year.
When do the other two big ones drop, Matt? Are those on the way pretty soon?
The Early Round Bust is actually coming tomorrow. I have to put the finishing touches on that article myself tonight after we're done talking. And then I believe it's the week after for the breakout pick.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it. I had a chance to read the Comeback Player of the Year article. It was great. It's worth the DraftSharks subscription for those three articles alone. But you guys are putting out some fantastic stuff. It's definitely a group of guys that we really respect that we think are very sharp altogether collectively. So it's awesome to talk shop tonight. Before we get going on the questions, I want to give a shout out to Joey Brown. And I want to wish everything well to the people in Eastern Kentucky. Joey's a loyal DraftSharks and GOAT District listener, also DraftSharks subscriber, and he's a fantastic high-stakes drafter in the NFFC. He's in the DraftSharks Invitational this year, and I know he has some family members directly affected by the flooding. So we just want to give you a shout, Joey, and hope things are going to get back to normal there quickly.
Yeah, good luck to you guys, Joey. Certainly thinking about you.
I want to get started. We could go on and on about the hypocrisy of the NFL, but just strictly from a fantasy perspective, we now have a presumed timeline for Deshaun Watson, 6 games. Provided nothing changes with that timeline, how are you approaching Amari Cooper, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, and David Njoku? And I think you've had some interesting takes on Hunt, so maybe you can elaborate on him a little more.
Yeah, first of all, fortunately we've had Watson projected to miss 6 games on DraftSharks for a while, because that's been kind of the murmur that that's what was coming. So that's how we said it. It's helped us look at the numbers from that standpoint. I think, it has put Amari Cooper toward the bottom of wide receiver 2 territory in our rankings, whereas he's been mid to low wide receiver 3 in ADP. So I think there's value on him. I'm not sure that the ceiling's high enough that he becomes a target player for me, because you're still talking about a range that includes guys like Darnell Mooney, Rashad Bateman. So he's mixed in with some other guys that could all outperform that range. But there is certainly better value to Amari Cooper where he's going if we get Deshaun Watson for most of the season. I don't think Nick Chubb has been getting discounted. I think he's finally getting drafted where he should toward the end of round 2, around that 2-3 turn. So nothing's changing on him for me. Kareem Hunt, on the other hand, I think has been a value all along, because he's been going a couple rounds later than where he's been over the past couple of years, even though nothing's changed for him. We are expecting now that he's going to be the number 2 running back in Cleveland. If he's not, to me, it would be because another team traded for him. So I would think that his situation would get even better if he doesn't end up with the Browns. So I don't see an avenue from Hunt's ADP where he disappoints, obviously, unless he gets hurt, and that's an issue for anybody. David Njoku, the last one that he threw out, he's been going so late that I don't think the quarterback question has mattered for him. And when I projected way back in February with just, a full season of Deshaun Watson, because that's how I started my numbers, David Njoku's up there in the top 12 for me. So he's going to have to rise a lot to get out of the range where I'm drafting him. We'll see whether he picks up. I don't think that he's going to go up too much, because there's just a lot of dudes floating around in that range of tight end. It doesn't seem like there's a ton of excitement for David Njoku. Maybe people are still, hurting a little bit from him letting them down back in whatever it was, his 3rd season.
Yeah, I think the Cooper one's interesting. I agree that he's not as exciting as some of the guys going around him, but I think based on your team structure, he becomes a little more interesting with Watson there, because I think he could hit that 130 target range that he hit 2 seasons ago. I love your take on Hunt. Hunt is just such a value now. I saw him go mid-8th round recently. I think that, if he rises up even a little bit, he's still value. And yeah, Njoku is super interesting, and I think there's a lot of sharp people that want pieces of Njoku this year. I know, JD, you've been taking tight end late. Is Njoku a guy that you've been drafting?
Yeah, I was going to say both Njoku and Hunt are both guys that in positions that's, depending on your build, you want to get depth, and those are guys, if you're waiting at the position, especially at tight end. And Njoku's just one of those guys that you want to throw in the mix. You've got the Tanyans in there, the Noah Fants, Hayden Hurst. You throw a bunch of those together, especially if you want to skip tight end early, and then you're going to hit on these guys, especially best ball. It's nice to mix these guys up. And then Dynasty, I mean, like you said, Njoku, not too many people talking about it right now, so maybe a good time to go buy these guys. Hunt, for me, again, he's one of these guys you want to throw in with the Pollards, the Edmonds, the Singletaries, kind of in that group, whether it's early or zero RB or hero RB. He's a guy you want to throw in there, especially on a team like this that's going to want to run the ball, especially in the first part of the season. And like we said, there's always kind of that option of maybe he gets traded or sent to a different situation. But even as is, he gave you RB19 last year. And he's going, I was trying to see where he's going about, like you guys said, end of the 7th into the 8th. I don't know what RB he is off the board because I don't have it in front of me, but I think you're getting good value there for sure.
Yeah, I've liked a lot of the builds we've seen where you're able to take him as your RB3. It really kind of gives you, solidifies your build. I've liked that a lot. One take you've had this offseason, Matt, I actually heard it when you were on the couch with Sigmund Bloom, was you talked about kind of, and this is more of a way that fantasy drafters kind of approach things and their thought process. Talk about like the way drafters are approaching Jahan Dotson versus Sky Moore. Is this a sound process, or do people maybe need to take a step back and look at things like draft capital when they're evaluating situations just a little bit more?
Yeah, I think that people are still not doing that enough. And, I think we all started out liking Sky Moore a lot as a prospect, collectively. I'm sure there are differences, but we all liked him as a prospect. And then he lands in Kansas City and you're like, oh, Sky Moore with Patrick Mahomes. It's easy to get excited about that in a vacuum, but we got to look at how long he stayed on the board. Even the Chiefs let some picks go without taking Sky Moore. He was the 13th wide receiver off the board. He went after Wan'Dale Robinson, after John Mechie, after Tyquan Thornton, after Alec Pierce. Now, obviously, all those guys weren't picked by the Chiefs, so maybe they were just like, please give us Sky Moore. But I think this is an example of overrating the landing spot and not being with reality. And I say that just in relation to where Jahan Dotson is going, because he was the 5th wide receiver off the board, 16th overall in the draft, ahead of Treylon Burks. And now he's going about 20 spots later in wide receiver ADP, maybe 18, depending on what ADP you're looking at. To me, that's just a complete mismatch. I mean, you could dive into each individual situation, how much sense the guy makes. And I don't think that Sky Moore is a crazy pick at wide receiver 47, but I do think relative to each other, it's just ignoring what the league told you about those two players with where they went.
It's interesting. It's kind of like people have their preconceived notions of a guy before the draft. Then the draft capital occurs and they say, oh, that pick was incorrect because this is how I viewed the guy. Whereas, the fact that Dotson went that early, he's getting some rave reviews in camp. It's kind of going under the radar. I know JD and I each added shares of him in Dynasty. It was super cheap to do so. And I have Sky Moore, but I think it's more of we need to take a step back and realize that maybe our priors before the draft is the wrong way to approach things. It's kind of like Kadarius Toney last year, where people saw the draft pick and they're like, oh, this was a bad pick. And now people are tripping over themselves to get Kadarius Toney in redraft this year. JD, you've got some Dotson stashed on a number of your teams, don't you?
Well, we it's a deodorant, right? The Walmart deodorant. After you go to Walmart to get your deodorant, and then you walk into like here in Canada, we have Shoppers Drug Mart, right? That's like the more expensive place to get all your pharma stuff. And I just can't buy Dotson. I'm talking rookie drafts. This was kind of the example we were using. And it's similar in redraft. I mean, you're kind of seeing him come up now, but in rookie drafts, especially the early ones, you were getting him super cheap for first round, the draft capital that he holds. Again, maybe one guy there that's kind of going to be hogging a lot of those targets, but not much behind him. Wentz coming in, you think, they're going to trust him enough to get enough production out of Dotson. And like you said, you're talking about 3-4 rounds different right now in the football guys tournament, Matt, with what you're saying between Sky Moore and Dotson. And you would think that Dotson is getting more of the opportunities maybe a little earlier than Moore would, just with all the competition they have out there in KC. And then you look at the price, do you want to, some people might want to skip the 5th round Juju and maybe sprinkle a couple of those later options in the KC offense. I don't know, but Sky Moore is not someone I was paying for early when the hype was there. Maybe if he keeps dropping, we'll see it. I don't know. Where are you guys on where his Sky Moore's ADP is right now, like in the 9th, 10th round? You think that's?
I think it's fine because I think that you're drafting for upside in that range anyway.
Yeah.
And I think like even if his weekly floor is not necessarily there at the beginning of the season, I don't think you're drafting Sky Moore for week 1. I think you want him to be one of these rookies that develops as the season goes along, and then maybe week 6 on, you've got a guy that's a borderline wide receiver 2 type range guy if it all works out well.
Just do a quick OTC. Sorry, Matt. I'll let you jump in. Quick OTC, and you can throw it in with your answer. Sky Moore, or do you like Brendan Ayuk?
Ayuk.
Yeah, Ayuk for me.
Right, and then what about Tyler Lockett, Sky Moore?
Lockett.
I'm still going Lockett. I'm a sucker for Lockett.
Chris Olave?
That would be Sky Moore for me.
I think I'm going to Sky Moore, especially with Michael Thomas back.
Okay. So those first three guys are also going after Sky Moore, Olave as well, but, probably close between the two.
Yeah, and that's why I'm trying to be careful to not say that I think Sky Moore is going at an outlandish spot, because I like him. I certainly see the upside of the situation. I think it's more important for considering what they are. And I think even though we all know how important draft capital is now, and I think we all probably factor it in more now than we used to, that's just like a pretty clear example of people still not. Because we're talking about the 5th wide receiver drafted versus the 13th wide receiver drafted. And I don't know if Patrick Mahomes is the difference, but I guess it's more important for where Jahan Dotson is going than for where Sky Moore is going, because it definitely highlights Jahan Dotson as an easy upside guy where he's going.
Yeah, I think the way I took it is it was more of your general way of looking at the way that the fantasy drafters kind of look at situations, and I thought it was a very sharp way of doing so. Want to talk about the 101? It's kind of a big argument right now, the CMC versus Jonathan Taylor. I think maybe a few months back it was Taylor, and now I'd say it's more often than not. I think there's a little bit more people on CMC right now. I've also heard an argument towards potentially considering one of the big 2 wide receivers behind him, just especially for being unique in your builds, maybe for high volume drafting and whatnot, especially in like the underdog contests. I know you guys recently had a FFPC main event where the DraftSharks drafted. Who did you guys go with at the 101?
We took Christian McCaffrey 101, and he was the consensus pick. Nobody was opposed to it. And for me, I don't know if calling him the clear number 1 over Jonathan Taylor is completely fair, because if I'm picking it 10 times, it's not going to be 10.
60-40, I think right now for what I'm seeing. Maybe you would agree with that?
Yeah, I would say at least 60. It might even be more than that. But I also have Cooper Kupp in the mix for those, and it depends on the format. But if we're talking full PPR, FFPC main event here, where you only have to start 2 wideouts, it's probably running back. And for me, it's definitely McCaffrey over Taylor if I'm making that choice once. And it's just that he needs less to go, exactly right for him to be the top player there. And if everything goes right for both of them, Christian McCaffrey still has the higher ceiling because of the receiving stuff. Jonathan Taylor needs that smash touchdown rate on the ground to be worth that spot. I mean, he was the top scoring running back last year, but it was still down from where the past few years of top scoring running backs have been. So I think there's, there are more things that can go well for McCaffrey to keep him from letting us down from that spot.
If you draft 10 times, are you mixing it up?
Yeah, it would be. If I'm drafting 10 times, it would probably end up being something like 5. If we're talking main event, 5 McCaffrey, 3 Kupp, and 2 Taylor, I think. And the thing with Kupp, when I need to start 3 receivers, he's my favorite pick there, because I think he has the lowest chance of busting for you among the 3 of them. Not just because a wide receiver is less likely to get hurt, but even though last season for Kupp was a convergence of everything going exactly right, each individual piece wasn't outlandish. I mean, the target share was huge, like 31%. That's probably not happening again, but 27-28% seems reasonable. The touchdown rate was not out of this world. It was right around 11%, I believe. That's right in line with where he's been for most of his career. The catch rate was up a little bit, but not crazy. So, all these pieces, it's like, yeah, he could repeat that thing. That one could be down a little bit. Maybe he's not the number 1 wideout, but he's not going to go from 1 to like 12 this year, I don't think, if he's healthy.
If he had 0 touchdown catches last year, I believe he would have been wide receiver 2 overall.
Theo, we have an appearance. Mr. Flo is in the house.
Welcome to Dan. I'm glad to see you got the power up, Dan.
No, don't have the power up. Can you guys hear me?
We can absolutely hear you.
You're good, man. You're good.
All right, sounds good. I'm in my backup podcast studio out on the deck with the hotspot going. Enough light out here to be able to see what's going on. So, yeah, we're in business one way or another.
And a brief warning to the pros versus Joes drafters: whenever Dan takes a draft outside, whenever he takes it outside to the beautiful Minnesota summers, he usually puts together a ridiculous squad. So we're just a quick little warning for those guys.
Yeah, actually, two quick things. You just remind me, guys. Stay tuned. What is it? 9 p.m. Is it on at 9 p.m. on the? Is it the FFPC site where they've got the pros versus Joes? They'll be streaming that live. So the three of us will be drafting a team in there. And Scott Connor, a big one of our favorite guests, big Dynasty guy, was on with me last week. Go check out our last episode. I wanted to throw that in for the newbies, especially for a midsummer Dynasty deep dive.
I think that you're basically your take on CMC is it's the optimistic approach to drafting. He could be 30 points per game. I love Taylor, but I can totally see it. I actually took, with your argument for Cooper Kupp, I took Justin Jefferson the other night at the 101 in NFFC 350 because I just think that in the starting three wide receivers format, I love getting one of those guys. But I think you're starting to see more people kind of on the CMC, a healthy CMC at the 101, just because I think it's optimism in your builds. And, you know, he's got a clearer path to 30 points per game than Taylor does. I think Taylor has, for me, if I'm drafting 10 times, I'm still probably taking Taylor the most times. I love him, but I can totally see the argument. Dan, are you mixing it up these days? If you get 10 101s in the FFPC main event, are you mixing it up? And how do you think it would break down for you?
It kind of depends on how many 102s I get, I suppose. So that's definitely part of the equation. I mean, I'd love to end up with relatively even exposure between the two.
It is interesting, though, Theo. You talk about 30 points. JT last year, the number one RB, 21.9. He gave you average. But then you go look at CMC when he was the number one, and he gave you just under 30 points per game, right? So if you're looking for that ceiling, as much as I'm a JT guy and I'm a Colts fan, I think sprinkling some CMC, because the age and all that, the apex, and, you know, there's a bunch of things that kind of balance it out, I think. So I might go more 50-50.
And I saw, by the way, one of the listeners saying, what about Justin Jefferson? I have taken some Justin Jefferson over Cooper Kupp just to make sure I'm not missing out on Justin Jefferson. Like Dan's point with the 101 and 102, like, I don't want to not have any Justin Jefferson just because I landed in front of him and took Cooper Kupp every single time.
Yeah.
And Dan and I did get a 101 FFPC dropped our main event draft slots. So we're splitting the team in that's the online one, Dan. We have 101, so we can discuss this for about a month.
Oh yeah. Depending on what happens, you may have to talk me out of Justin Jefferson at the 101.
It'll be on every show sheet from now till then.
It's not hard to get me to take Justin Jefferson. You just need to ask, Dan.
Yep.
And then Matt, I wanted you guys are big in Bills territory. DraftSharks guys, a real presence up there in Western New York. Talk to me about Stephon Diggs. I know you're very bullish on him this season. He's currently getting drafted as wide receiver 4 overall. Goes somewhere between the mid first and early second round. I've loved my builds when I draft Stephon Diggs. How are you approaching him this season, and your expectations for him?
Yeah, he was particularly a target for me early in the drafters drafts where it's full PPR and you start 3. I have him right where he is in ADP. That's where he is in my rankings. So I like him, and I just feel comfier with Stephon Diggs than with Devontae Adams and CeeDee Lamb, who, you know, with Adams, we have the question of going to Vegas. We also have a pretty decent sized injury history, and the DraftSharks injury guide has a high for receivers projection on Devontae Adams' chances of getting hurt. And, you know, it's not a reason that I would take Adams off my board, but it's one of those splitting hairs things that doesn't go in Adams' favor. Lamb, we just haven't seen him be the lead wide receiver yet. So it's just that question. We have seen Stephon Diggs be the dominant number 1 receiver in Buffalo. And one reason that I feel better about Diggs, and kind of talking myself into why I feel that way, is I don't love Gabriel Davis. I think he's overpriced. And I think that I've noticed, especially playing in like these tournament formats, I've noticed that in previous seasons, I've not thought enough about how I should alter my thinking for teammates of a guy who I don't like or do like. You know, whatever my expectation is for that team, I need to think through the impact on everybody else. So if I'm not at all taking Gabriel Davis where he's going, but yet I'm not down on Josh Allen, I'm not down on the offense, I'm not, you know, going out of my way to buy the running backs, then I should really like Stephon Diggs, because what I'm even subconsciously expecting is that he's going to continue to be the clear number one wideout in one of the league's top pass offenses. He does have some upside in both his touchdown rate and his yards per catch. Last year, his ADOT actually went up and his yards per catch went down. So that doesn't seem like it should happen. So one of those two things is going to change. I'm going to go ahead and bet that there's some upside to the yards and the touchdowns. And I mean, he's fairly safe from that starting point. Nobody's truly safe going that early, but feel pretty good about Stefon Diggs. And I do think he has the upside to, ultimately lead the position in scoring if everything went right.
Yeah, I love that take. And we haven't seen a massive touchdown year for Diggs in Buffalo. He had this ridiculous year in year one there where he won leagues. And then last year, we would say slightly disappointing at ADP, but not really. He still was a wide receiver one. Dan, I know you love Stefon Diggs this year as well. Maybe anything to add?
Yeah, not a whole lot to add. I mean, other than just he's kind of my go-to guy in the back half of that first round. If there's, kind of nobody else good that I like or whatever, I'm taking Diggs there because I feel real good about him. I feel like he's got a great there's a great story for upside, and he's also a guy who, as long as he's healthy, he's not going to lose you anything as well. And that's kind of a nice that's a nice way to close out the first round if you're not finding a guy you look better.
He also opens you up to those second round running backs, which I think there's a number of guys we all like in that range. Whereas if you go running back and then hit wide receiver, like Matt said, even though they're all like really attractive draft picks, they're just a little more question marks than Diggs just seems like Teflon right now. JD, you've been drafting Diggs as well.
Yeah, I just did a draft. Yeah, he's my wide receiver 4, as I told you guys before we pressed the red button. Drafters, I last night I did a live one. I'm pretty sure it was a Drafters, either Drafters or an FFPC. But at the back end, same den. Sometimes it's nice because he might fall even further into the second. Those are always nice to get him. It's a little bonus. And then in those super flex, it's nice because he gets to that 2-3 turn. But I mean, you can't go wrong with Diggs. You think that offense is just going to keep, improving and progressing. And like you said, Theo, the touchdowns, maybe when they're not there, we always expect them to show up. And this year, I mean, who's more favorite than the Bills to just smash in the league this year? So you want part of that offense. He's definitely the one. And then if you like to hit your quarterbacks early, you can stack them with Allen coming back if you want to be the first to take the quarterback. But I like Diggs where he's going at the back end at the first there.
And you mentioned we haven't gotten that big touchdown season yet, but he led the league in end zone targets last year. So I think it's coming unless they just stop throwing to him there for some reason.
Exactly. You had a couple of those games where you thought you were going to have like a 35, 40-point game, and he'd like it would just miss. It would be like a one touchdown game, or it was very frustrating. But we're rooting for you, Stefon Diggs. We're expecting it this year. You guys have, like we talked about a little earlier, you guys have been crushing it with these beat reporters and team-specific pods. I think it's a really cool thing you're doing. You had Grant Cohn on. Am I saying it's Cohn or Con? Grant Cohn, who was a 49ers guy. I thought he was good. And you guys discussed it. What is your expectations for – I'll say it's an offense we're all pretty excited about with Trey Lance taking over the reins. What's your expectations for Trey Lance and also his offensive weapons? Deebo Samuel, who got the massive contract this week, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, who we're all – I mean, I know I'm bullish on Ayuk, and I know you are as well. And then the running backs.
Yeah, I think it was really exciting when Trey Lance dipped outside of the top 12 when there was a lot of chatter about Jimmy Garoppolo maybe sticking around. It's a little bit harder to get excited about him now that he's going QB8 on Underdog. And I think he's probably going to be going in that range, especially as we get into more main events where people say, I want Trey Lance. He seems like that kind of guy that people are going to plant a flag with. I think last year's Jalen Hurts season is probably, a decent bar for expectations for Trey Lance. I think we're going to go low pass rate with San Francisco just because that's how they leaned anyway. And now they've got a brand new quarterback who is in his first year starting in the NFL. I'm not going to be overweight on drafting Trey Lance from where he's going. I'm excited about the upside. I do think he has the upside to pay off. I think at QB8 or anywhere in that range, it's probably a little bit early for him to be a target for me. And then I don't know, maybe you guys have thoughts on that before we dive into the other members of the offense.
Well, shout out to Chris Vaccaro, our guest tomorrow night of The Athletic and NFFC Hall of Famer. He took Trey Lance in the draft I was in with him ahead of Jalen Hurts and ahead of Tom Brady. And for the NFFC, Tom Brady is a very safe pick with a 6-point passing touchdown. So I think there's a lot of people getting excited about Trey Lance. I'm excited about his ability to pass downfield. I think that's kind of underrated. It seems like they're going to try to target Ayuk downfield. Potential big plays for Debo as well. And we know Kittle can get loose. So I like the idea of a quarterback who can really run with the downfield targets. And it's like in DraftSharks, you guys show like the range of outcomes. I think Lance is that guy. If you're really shooting for upside, he could be a guy who could take you to the promised land that you're not having to use like a Kyler Murray or Lamar Jackson like draft capital on, although it's getting there. Dan,
Right.
How about you?
Yeah, I definitely like Lance where he had been going. I'm actually just now starting to kind of get back into drafts, so trying to get my handle back on the ADP and everything as to where he's at right now. But as long as he's not in the top 9 or 10 quarterbacks, then I think Lance is still definitely a value. And it's guys like that I look to try to supercharge a lineup. Like you were saying, you can get Kyler Murray or Lamar Jackson weeks out of a guy who's quite a bit cheaper.
Well, go ahead, JD.
No, I was just going to say he's kind of going there, Dan, and that's kind of I think you guys, Matt and Dan, both touched on it. He was going at a really nice price early, and I think as we get closer to the season, because look, he's got the weapons there, especially you believe Debo's going to come back. He's got all those weapons there. We see the talent that he has, so the hype is just going to build as we see this kid on the field. But I was going to do some quick OTC guy like Trey Lance or Dak Prescott.
Well, that's the thing. I was just looking at Dak Prescott because he's a full round later in underdog ADP, and there are 2 other quarterbacks in between him and Trey Lance. So it's more like Trey Lance or somebody else, and then next round, or maybe even the one after.
And the somebody else's are guys who have done it. Like you've got Russell Wilson, you got Joe Burrow in the FFPC football guys right now. They're all going like right beside him. So for me, it gets hard as we get closer to the season, but I did like his value, like Dan said earlier on.
I just think that he's got such a floor with his rushing ability that he's a guy that I definitely want exposure to. And I know some people listening to this might only draft one team in the entire season. But I know for guys who draft a lot of teams like we do, I don't not want some Lance. He's got a massive rushing floor, and also we love his weapons. If we just simply take Kittle, Ayuk, and Debo in a vacuum versus every other wide receiver combo and tight end, I mean, we're putting them in definitely the upper third, if not higher, in the NFL. So, and we also believe in his coach and offensive scheme that's produced with, Jimmy Garoppolo has gotten, big offensive outputs from guys. So I don't know. It's interesting to me. And you do bring up the guys that are proven, but Lamar Jackson, 2019, he came in, he hadn't done anything. Patrick Mahomes the year before hadn't done anything. Kyler Murray was quarterback 2, I believe, like 2 seasons ago, and he didn't have any massive success before that. So, and Jalen Hurts last year was QB6. So we've seen guys do it the last few years where they absolutely smash their ADP at the quarterback position, and I think Lance is a good bet. As good a bet as any, as a guy who could really, really be that guy this year. Matt, how about his weapons? How excited are you about those guys?
I have not been excited about Debo ever since draft season started, because he began in round 1, which was way too early. He's still in round 2, and it doesn't work for me because the guy that we got last year did everything outlandishly. He spent the first half of the season as the wide receiver 1, wasn't getting the wide receiver 1 targets, but was leading the league in yards per catch, was scoring, was going downfield. He spent the second half of the season as like the midnight dream of what everybody sees when they watch Tony Pollard, where he scores every single time he carries the ball, and was also getting a few carries. This season is probably not going to look like either of those versions of Deebo Samuel. He's not going to do either of those things at that kind of rate. So he's not somebody that I'm buying in on. If it's a best ball format where we have those playoff weeks at the end, I don't want to be totally out, because he obviously can have those boom weeks where even if it's a disappointing season, he's somebody I need to have in week 15, 16, 17. So I don't want to be totally out there, but if I'm building a lineup setting roster, I'm close to totally out on Deebo Samuel there. Brandon Ayuk is a lot easier to buy because he's going significantly later. The talent's there. I'm not sure the motivation is, but he's going at least late enough, like wide receiver 4 territory, that if he doesn't hit, if he doesn't get it together, if he's in the doghouse again, it's not killing me. And then Kittle's kind of in between where I'm at market, where like if Trey Lance, he might be the one that I'd be most interested in stacking with Trey Lance because he doesn't need to get as many targets as the wide receivers to hit versus others at that position. And I think if Trey Lance does immediately hit as a passer, he's almost definitely going to bring the tight end with him and probably give George Kittle more touchdowns than what we've gotten from him so far.
He had success with the tight end position in college. I don't know if that was, necessarily not having a ton of weapons there, but he definitely did target tight ends. Ayuk, I love that you're on Ayuk. I think that he's a guy that I've come around to drafting a lot. He's getting a lot of buzz that's positive from both the beat writers and then the coaching staff talking him up, which is like a summer ago, they were doing everything they could to kind of throw him under the bus. And then he totally struggled for the first half of the season. But it sounds like he's a guy that's matured and they're talking about getting the ball downfield. I mean, I think that year 3, Ayuk could be a nice bounce back. Kittle, I just haven't drafted a whole lot of Kittle. I don't dislike Kittle. I just haven't drafted a whole lot. Dan, where are you at on the big 3 weapons in San Fran?
Yeah, so I'm pretty much the same on Deebo. I'm going to have him sprinkled in, but it's a little bit tougher and just like a standalone league to put him in there. Ayuk, I do like the price on. I think Matt kind of hit the nail on the head with the potential lack of motivation there. He just hasn't really seemed to be able to work his way permanently out of the Shanahan doghouse. He's kind of in and out all the time, and those guys worry me. But again, as Matt was saying, at that price, I will definitely have some shares. And Kittle's a guy I've been warming to as well. One thing I like is this is about as cheap as we've seen him, over the past several years. So, there's something to be said for that. And, a lot of the problem with Kittle is just basically injury related. If he's not hurt and he's in your lineup, he's probably going to produce. So, he's one of those guys that's, especially in managed leagues, he's real easy to, figure out. If I have Kittle, I'm going to want a good second tight end, to be able to put in there with him. But, if Kittle's healthy, I'm definitely putting him in there, and I'm going to sleep just fine.
Kittle, I've had to talk myself into because I like Dallas Goedert a lot, and you can wait 3 or 4 rounds and take Dallas Goedert. But then I look at George Kittle, I'm like, man, there's not been another year where we could get him in the 5th if things go well for him. If Trey Lance is just, ready to be a good NFL quarterback, not even terrific, but just good. Like, we could be looking back at George Kittle's ADP and being like, how could we not have been buying George Kittle?
I mean, if he's healthy, he's definitely got tight end 1 overall in his range of outcomes.
Well, he's given us 2 tight end 3 seasons, 1 tight end 1, a tight end 4 last year. And then obviously his rookie season was a little different, but the last 4 years he's been a top 4 tight end. He's going as a tight end 5 off the board at that price in the 4th, 5th round, tight end premiums, especially you're looking at these football guys tournaments. But this team, what's nice with San Fran, like you said, guys, they're nice to stack. They're easy to stack, especially hitting Kittle, Lance, and then, Ayuk. They give you a nice little route in your draft when you start taking them, especially if you start with Kittle. Deebo, I'm like you guys, man. I had so much Deebo the last couple of years. I love him as a player, but at his price, it's hard to pay. It's like the deodorant, once I paid $3.99, man, I can't pay it these second round prices anymore.
I think JD you have a great point on that. The tight end 4 finish for Kittle last year. Like last year he finished as tight end 4, but he still crushed you in terms of where you had to spend draft capital in order to draft him. And it's kind of like the cutoff line for absolute tight end smash season was like Mark Andrews smashed. He crushed his ADP. Travis Kelce, big win rates. And then tight end 3 was Dalton Schultz. You got him off the waiver wire, or you took him in like the 20th round, because you're like a sicko and you love drafting, murky tight end situations like we do. But Kittle finishes tight end 4, but it didn't it didn't impact you.
And
It's
he
kind of
gave
like
you
a
the most
purgatory
touchdowns. He gave you the most touchdowns he's given you too with 6, which is interesting, right? Because it's kind of the opposite of what you would think.
But this year, if he finishes tight end 4, it doesn't matter if it's like a tier break from the position from 1 or 2. He's still going to return value because, like Matt said, you're getting him in like the 5th round. In some of these, FFPC, he's going later than he has, and like NFFC and FFWC, forget about it. You can get him super late. So he's super interesting.
Just as an aside, Theo, figured I'd throw out there that dynasty trade I made this weekekend where I traded.
You took it down.
Yeah, I traded AJ Brown for Kittle in a 3rd. And, my reasoning behind it was basically, it's FFPC, so tight end premium. So that gives Kittle extra value there. And also I'm basically trading a guy who has a lot of trouble staying on the field, but is a yak monster when he is on the field, for a guy who has a lot of trouble staying on the field, who's a yak monster when he is on the field. And I got a 3rd round out of it. And I got, I switched him over to a position that was more valuable, the tight end position. So.
And a humble brag for Dan is Dan has so much AJ Brown that he can afford to lose.
You're not wrong there.
I am not. I'm definitely not wrong on that one. We don't really need to go too much into detail on the 49ers running backs, Matt. But do you have a specific play? If you're at cost, would you rather have Elijah Mitchell or Tyrion Davis-Price, or maybe a later one? Or is it a situation you're avoiding altogether?
It's a situation I've been mostly avoiding. Elijah Mitchell I've been off of throughout draft season, just because throughout all of Kyle Shanahan's coaching history, every running back that has gotten primary running back carries has fallen off in carries per game the next year. And I know we saw Elijah Mitchell be the lead back last year. It's just, if you look back every single one, there's not been anyone that did not fall off the following year. He doesn't catch passes. I don't think that we should expect it. So I think he's at an okay price where I'm not telling anybody he's a bad pick, but I just don't think the ceiling's there where he's still not on my board. And then if I knew that Ty Davis-Price was the 2nd running back, then sure, I'd be on him, but I don't know that. I mean, the 3rd round running back they took last year let everybody down. So I'm certainly not about to trust the guy that wasn't anybody's buzz running back coming out of LSU ahead of the draft. He's now like this year's Trey Sermon. He just hasn't given us Trey Sermon's season yet. So I've been mostly staying out, and there are just other guys, whether it be running back or even other positions, that I like more in the range where I would be considering them.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say Elijah Mitchell is kind of starting to fall to the place where he's interesting to me. He's going kind of basically as a back end, the end of the RB2, beginning of the RB3 range. And, at that price, I'm definitely going to make sure I've got a share or two. I don't want to load up on him, but, with that San Francisco backfield and the amount of points that can be scored out of it, even with Trey Lance siphoning off some of that work, I still think there's some upside at where Mitchell's going right now.
Yeah, an RB26 and FFPC ADP on our site right now. So I agree. He's a some shares guy, certainly in that range.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even if you take him in the 7th round and you get 10 starts out of him, even if he's just like brittle and they're going to work other guys in, if you get 10 starts out of Elijah Mitchell from the 7th round, he'll be, an RB2 every single week. So you're right. I think he is starting to get interesting as he gets pushed down. Give me your quick thoughts on 2 really murky situations. Is there a Kansas City running back that interests you? And is there a Green Bay wide receiver that interests you?
Isaiah Pacheco has gotten interesting over the past few days because he's getting some buzz and working ahead of the other guys. And I mean, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I like the best. And I've been drafting him at wherever he's been going because he hasn't gotten anywhere close to being too expensive to bet on. I have not bet on Ronald Jones, which has also converted into supporting CEH more. I have never liked Jerick McKinnon as a draft option, so I'm especially happy to hear Pacheco getting that early bump, working ahead of McKinnon, Derek Gore, and other guys there in practices. I'm waiting to see him move up the ADP now to the range where we can't take him anymore, but I'm interested because I think Jerick McKinnon has been getting overdrafted all along. And then you said the Green Bay wide receivers as well, right?
Yep.
I like Romeo Doubs. He's been getting a bit more buzz lately where he's going to climb some. But to me, this is a situation where I'm taking shots late. Allen Lazard, I guess it's kind of similar to Sky Moore in that he's going in a range where it's okay. He's right outside of wide receiver 3 territory so far. That might climb if we keep getting stuff like Aaron Rodgers alluding to him being the number 1 wideout. So he's okay, but I don't think there's a whole lot to Allen Lazard. So I'd much rather wait and grab somebody late. And to me, it's Dobbs because he came in with the book on him being polished, being like NFL ready, runs good routes. And the coaches were talking about him early, impressing in practices. Matt LaFleur has already talked about him like settling into a regular process of just like consistency. Like he's doing what rookies don't usually do. So just the way they're talking about him sounds like the kind of guy that could earn trust early, get on the field early, and is going late enough in a draft that you're really just buying a penny stock.
No, I like the Dubs call, and I complimented you in the pre-show. Matt's been talking Dubs for like a month and a half, and this week he started getting drafted. Fantasy Mojo tweeted out, that he's going like in the 13th round. I drafted him in the 16th round this weekend. I think he's interesting. He's getting a lot of great buzz. Dan, anything to add? Is there a Green Bay wide receiver for you at this point?
So going back to Kansas City, I'm 3/4 of the way there with Matt. I agreed with everything up until his fade of McKinnon. At cost, I'm going to have some McKinnon as well. The guy's just too electric. It took him a while to come back from that bad knee injury he had at San Francisco, but he appeared back. And the one guy I'm definitely not betting on is Ronald Jones. He just manages to find his way into the doghouse everywhere he goes. Those are not typically guys that I'm going to put any sort of trust in whatsoever. And then Green Bay wide receivers. Oh, and Pacheco. That's a great call. That's somebody that I kept taking stabs on in rookie drafts this spring. So he's somebody I'm definitely rooting for. No idea what he can end up doing, but I'm rooting for him for sure. And then Green Bay, same thing with Dobbs is Pacheco. I was taking a lot of late shots on him. So I like him a lot there. The drafting I was doing before I took my little hiatus, I really didn't have any Dobbs in season long or best balls or anything like that. So I may have missed the boat there a little bit, but he's a guy that I'd rather bet on than Lazard, just based on the cost. Also even rather bet on him than Watson, just based on the cost. And the sneaky guy that I would be picking up in Green Bay, I guess, is Randall Cobb. I think he could probably do some early season damage. I don't expect him to last all season or anything like that, but the first few games, he might be able to hold down a spot in your wide receiver room until somebody else is ready to contribute.
Pacheco, I loved hearing that they were working him out of the slot today. I thought that was super interesting. He's like a 4.37 guy. He's an athletic freak, and I think if he makes the roster, he's the kind of guy that at some point in the season you could be spending fab on. Derek Gore had those weeks, so it's very interesting in Kansas City that we're talking about Isaiah Pacheco, and it is August now. JD, anything? Any Green Bay wide receiver for you right now?
Yeah, 13% Lazard right now in FFPC ownership. Little sprinkles later on. The KC guys, CH. It's like every time I think, you know what? Okay, I want to gather some shares again. I just passed on him just now, and I went Judy to add Judy to Sutton in this best ball I'm doing. I just can't do it, man. With CH, I was never on it, and he hasn't done enough to change my mind. So just hoping that this year it's going to happen when you see the team keep bringing in new, other running backs to run behind them or with them or whatever it is. I want shares. I don't want 0 shares. I always base it on, how much I want of a guy. I'm not going to have no CH, but I don't have a lot of it. I like taking sprinkles on the late guys. Pacheco and Dynasty, I think Dan and I have him on a couple of Dynasty teams that we own together. And I think all of us were grabbing him anytime we could. He was so cheap in those rookie drafts, again, tied to the KC offense.
JD, appreciate you leaving CEH on the board for me, because that's down there at RB28 right now.
Get ready for disappointment, man. It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, but from RB28, if he disappoints me from there, I forget about it. I don't even have any idea that it happened come January.
He's one of those guys that enough people don't like him that he's like a sleeper that you can actually buy as a sleeper, which they don't exist a lot these days in fantasy. So I respect the CEH love.
2 rounds behind Elijah Mitchell on underdog still, by the way.
Yeah, that's solid.
Another running back who was a disappointment that's starting to have a little bit of buzz, but he's still going super late. Matt, I've heard some interesting takes from you on Miles Sanders. I drafted him at the 7-12 in an NFFC online championship last night. So, 7-12 for a guy behind that offensive line, I felt like that could be a big reward. What's your thought on Sanders right now? Is he a guy you're targeting or a guy you're taking when he falls to you?
My thought on Miles Sanders is that no matter what happens to him this season, he's probably going to be somebody I talk about in therapy, because I started out draft season in love with him. I mean, he's going in the range that you're talking about. He has been in that range. Maybe even
it's a therapy air horn.
I'm rusty. I'm real late.
In the history of the Coke District. Mental health air horn.
Yes.
So Miles Sanders, I mean, he started out going even later than he is right now, but within that range, and absolutely the ceiling is high from there for all the same reasons as CEH. Is there are things that he's let us down with before, but now that's all baked into the cost. So if they give him lead back carries, he absolutely could pay off. Now, there are little signs along the way that maybe he doesn't have the ultimate ceiling that I hope for. Last year, he was not a favorite near the goal line, and that hasn't been something he's been awesome at all along. The receiving has been hit or miss. So if they give more of that to Kenneth Gainwell, he could just, kind of settle in where he is RB 23 for the season. And maybe he's fine at ADP, but he doesn't have the ultimate ceiling. So ultimately what I would say on him is that he's going late enough that I'm still okay with buying Miles Sanders where he's going, because he's not going to crush me from an RB 26, round 7 or whatever it is in the specific draft. But I have at least tempered my excitement with some of the pink flags. They're not fully red, but they're pink flags on them.
JD, 7th round Miles Sanders or 12th round Kenneth Gainwell?
I was going to say 13th Gainwell, man. I'm all over Gainwell.
I'll say Gainwell just from I don't think we're going to see him. I've seen him at the 11-12 turn. Abib took him at the 11-12 turn in our main event, and Andrew and I took him in the 12th round. So I don't think
this is football. This is football guys' latest update as of August 1st that I'm seeing. So anywhere you get him there, 12th, 13th, 11th, whatever. To me, I way rather pass on Miles Sanders. And Dan knows I was the biggest Miles Sanders fan when he first came in the league. Best year he gave you was RB 17 when you're looking at points per game. And there's so many. I like this offense going into this season. He might be one of the only pieces that I'm not a big fan. And one of the reasons is that you can get Gainwell. He gave you RB5 and RB 11 the last 2 weeks against Tampa and Dallas, Gainwell. So I think he showed enough last year that if Miles Sanders falters, and there's a good chance he does or gets hurt, that I think they will lean on Gainwell. He's got that 3-down RB type of mode.
And just real quick on the could get hurt front, he's tied for the highest injury probability on our injury guide. So it's certainly a concern.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Talking about ADPs that are kind of converging or at least close enough to be impactful to drafters, players on the same team. Want to get Matt's picks on Mike Williams versus Keenan Allen, Jerry Jeudy versus Cortland Sutton. At ADP, which guy are you taking for those two situations?
It would be Keenan Allen when I'm setting a lineup, the guy that I can bet on every week. Mike Williams for best ball, because he definitely wins on spike weeks. I just don't think we're going to get him being different in terms of target share than what he was last year and week to week reliability. And I put some finger quotes on that because we overrate reliable receivers, but Keenan Allen's one of those few that does give it to us every week.
And then what about Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton?
Jeudy Sutton is more of a neither really for me at cost. I'm not buying either of them much. If I have to choose, I'm taking Jeudy, especially because he's going behind Sutton. But I say that not even feeling great about it because, maybe it is Sutton is the favorite guy for Russell Wilson. I don't think that either guy is a smash from where he's going. So they're just kind of there, and I'll take one if I'm looking to mix exposure at that point.
Is there a Denver Bronco that you love drafting if it's not one of those two?
I wouldn't say love. I think I'm most interested when I'm setting a lineup and taking Russell Wilson and not taking one of those receivers, because then I can get the passing game upside without having to bet on a receiver when I don't like any of them as the favorite. Certainly if it's best ball, late Tim Patrick is good, but that might be my favorite among the pass catchers, because otherwise it's just everything is spread around and I don't have any single thing that makes me want to bet on one guy being way ahead of the others.
And then a little further down, Elijah Moore, who goes somewhere, 5th, 6th, 7th, or Garrett Wilson, who's now right around round 10. Is there a favorite pick for a Jets wide receiver?
I mean, it's got to be Garrett Wilson. This is another situation where I don't care if I miss out on both of them, but Garrett Wilson is like 19 or 24 spots in wide receiver ADP behind Elijah Moore, depending on where you're looking. And that just doesn't make sense to me. Well, the only difference between them is Elijah Moore has played a year in the NFL, but they drafted Garrett Wilson inside the top 10. They drafted Elijah Moore in the second round. It's the same coaching staff that did that. So I don't have a reason to believe that Elijah Moore is that much better a player than Garrett Wilson.
I will say the Jets have said that they value, if it was like Elijah Moore was in this draft class, they would have valued him a lot higher. And I don't know if that's just paying lip service to a guy they have, but that's a situation where I want both, because I think they're both talented. And JD and Dan, anything different to add with those three wide receiver situations?
Let me say too that I would also take some more in the range where he's going, because he has come down from where he was early in draft season.
Yeah, for sure. I guess as far as Keenan and Mike Williams, Matt nailed it. Keenan and managed leagues is definitely the way I'm going. I will take some of the Denver wide receivers and best balls more so than in managed leagues, just because of the fact that, Russell Wilson was able to take, guys like Tyler Lockett and Doug Baldwin and turn them into superstars. But that kind of almost makes Tim Patrick be more of the guy that I would like to have the most shares of. But it's really hard to completely fade Sutton or Judy for that reason, though. I'm probably a little bit higher on Sutton than Judy, even though he's a little bit more expensive, just because Judy really hasn't shown us anything great yet, and that's concerning for me. And then what was it? Oh, Elijah Moore. Yeah, more is I'm definitely going to have some more. I'll have a little bit of Garrett Wilson. My main problem is I'm just not a big Zach Wilson believer, so that tempers my enthusiasm for both.
Yeah.
JD, anything to add with those?
No, I mean, for some reason, Keenan Allen's a guy, I just like the other receivers in that round better than him. I like A.J. Brown better. I like T. Higgins better. I like Cortland Sutton better. And I'm pretty high on Mike Williams. I like taking him in the 4th round, especially with around the other guys that he's going around. I just think that that's like the flippening that people are waiting, like Ethereum, Bitcoin. I think that's happening in this offense this year. Mike Williams is a beast, man, and I think he's getting unleashed this year. The Sutton, Judy, you guys heard me. I'm stacking them together when I can. I love this offense. Like I think this offense, Wilson is going to be rejuvenated. He's going to be a beast. These two receivers are going to be beasts. Everyone's like, oh, which one do I want? Take both. Take whichever. Some drafts I'll go Sutton. Some drafts I'll go Judy. Sometimes I'll mix them up. You guys know I love Alberto, one of my favorite tight ends this year, especially at his price. I think he's such a. If you wait on tight end, and you get tight end Alberto as your tight end 1, I think that's just pure money. So I like that offense. The Jets, you guys know I'm an Elijah Moore guy. I probably have too many shares of him in Dynasty and in leagues in general. Again, I like what he offers, what he showed last year. As much as the rookie comes in this year, I think we don't know how long it's going to take for him to jam and to get that rapport with Zach, but we've seen it from Moore, and you think you like to see this offense progress and throw the ball more. So you think Moore, excuse the pun, will definitely benefit.
We're reaching the hour mark. And I know Matt's got to go. So you have to answer the question that's contractually obligated for all of our guests since rookie draft pods ended. And we will take Stephon Diggs out of the equation for this one, because I know you're extremely bullish on him. Right now, Jamar Chase, Cooper Kupp, and Justin Jefferson are the consensus top 3 in every single format in ADP. Diggs is usually wide receiver 4. If another wide receiver besides that group finishes wide receiver 1 overall this year, who is it going to be?
Ooh, that's a good one. It's not one I've really pondered, to be honest. Man, let me look at the ADP real quick so that I don't forget.
Diggs has been a selection of many guests, but we're taking Diggs out of it for you because we know you're so bullish and that's your guy.
All right, so it can't be Cooper Kupp, can't be Justin Jefferson, cannot be Jamar Chase, cannot be Stephon Diggs. I will say, man, who else can finish wide receiver 1 here? Let's try to pick a crazy one. Oh, man, it gets ugly. I'm getting into the range where I don't want to draft any of the wide receivers now. All right, so I guess I would have to go with CeeDee Lamb among the options that I'm looking at, because if he does get that 28%, that's the knock, is targets are earned and he hasn't earned them yet. What if he does get 28% of the targets this year in Dallas with a quarterback who has shown that he can be a top 3 fantasy quarterback? And I mean, it's pretty thin around him. James Washington just broke his foot today, so it's getting thinner around him.
Oh, did he really? Oh, that's
yeah.
That's all over shares.
I guess I got to go CeeDee Lamb.
I love it. That's a couple of people have had that, and I think you've got the right argument. If he could just go nuclear target wise, could see 160 for him based on this offense. So that was awesome. Anything else to ask Matt, guys?
This has been awesome, man.
Yep.
Yeah, appreciate you hanging with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys.
Guys, check out Matt at SCHAUFDS on the Twitter machine. You know where to find him on DraftSharks. We appreciate his time. Theo, I mean, the guest list, we were like, hey, we should do, I tweeted you guys, yeah, we should do like a Shark Week, 1 week, because we did that. We have Shark Week every day here in the district. We just shark after shark after shark after sharp. So Theo, what do you have coming up?
So we have a bunch of great shows coming up throughout August. Tomorrow we have Chris Vaccaro, NFFC Hall of Famer. He's been on the GOAT District. This might be his 4th time on, at least his 3rd time on. He's one of the best drafters in the country. He's won an NFFC primetime, and he was in a draft with me the other night, where we're going to get a chance to go over a board and talk about some high stakes questions. And it's still early enough in the year that Chris will be honest and not give you the fake answer. So that'll be good as well. So we love having Chris on. He'll be on tomorrow night. And then we have another tight end show coming up on Monday. We have Andrew Cooper at Coop A Fiasco, who's been on the GOAT District before. Dan Williamson is the tight end whisperer for the GOAT District, and this is one of his go-to tight end analysts. Coop just dropped an awesome tight end article, which we will retweet before the show on Monday. But if you liked what we did with Adam Krautwurst, you're going to like what we're going to do with Andrew Cooper. We have a lot of tight end premium listeners. We're going to deep dive the hell out of the tight end position on Monday.
Guys, let's give a thanks to our supporters, our sponsors, the FFPC. We talk about it often. We're going to be drafting the pros versus Joes at 9:00 tonight. Check it out on the FFPC channel, myffpc.com. Go sign up now. We'll hook you up with a $35 sign-up bonus. Just send us your deets. You know the drill. On the Underdog, you can play for millions of dollars right now, drafting on your phone, on your laptop. Use the code DISTRICT for $100 free in your face when you sign up. And then you know where to get your Viridian Global GOAT gear at Viridian Global. Go check it out. Dan and I were rocking the tees tonight. Guys, hopefully you liked the show tonight. A lot of goodness was dropped. We appreciate you guys hanging with us. Stay tuned for more goodness. And check us out, guys. 9:00 on the FFPC. We'll check you all later.
GOAT District, you know the Pope listens. Dynasty, our religion, for the blokes missing. On all of these trades, on all of these plays, on all of these grades. By the end of the day, y'all getting played. So, what you gonna do next? Try to fill up that flex? Send the homie a text. That trash offer's the best. You try to make it complex, then they text you back. Now all of a sudden, they don't make any sense. Broaden your horizons, boy. Dynasty's not for the Simons, boy. These trades not for consignment, boy. Respect your opponent, y'all some piranhas, boy. This my advice from me to you. Open up your cute little podcast queue. Search up GOAT District, my dude. Pop it in your ear, man. Y'all know what to do. It's the And I always be trading. And I always be trading. And I always be trading. Y'all try to betray them, but first you gotta bait them. Fish.